Welcome everyone. Let's look at carbon dioxide. This is our third lesson on the topic carbon and its compounds. We are actually looking at the first oxide of carbon. When we talk about oxides of carbon, we are basically talking about two oxides: carbon monoxide and then carbon dioxide. So we are looking at carbon dioxide. First, we are aware that plants make their own food from carbon dioxide with the help of light energy being absorbed by chlorophyll to make their sugars or their food. And that food is what most animals depend on, including us humans. We depend on the food that green plants make. Okay, so that means that carbon dioxide is an important gas to have in the atmosphere. And in this presentation, we're going to look at the properties of carbon dioxide, the physical and chemical properties of carbon dioxide, and then we look at how we can prepare carbon dioxide in the laboratory. And then we shall look at the test for carbon dioxide, and then thereafter we shall look at the uses of carbon dioxide. Of course, one of those uses is what I've just stated now, that carbon dioxide is used by plants in making food that is very important for organisms, including humans. Okay, so carbon dioxide is a gas, right? All of us know that. We write it as CO2. Okay, CO2 is the formula for carbon dioxide. We are saying it is a colorless gas. Okay, it's a colorless gas and it is odorless, meaning that it does not have a characteristic smell. It does not have a smell, so you can't say, okay, I'm smelling carbon dioxide. You can't say that because it is an odorless gas. Okay, it is present in the atmospheric air at a percentage of 0.03% by volume. Okay, remember the largest by composition, the largest gas by composition, the atmospheric air, is nitrogen. Okay, so we have a number of processes that can result into an increase in the levels of carbon dioxide. Okay, and it's produced from our factories, from perfumes. Carbon dioxide can be produced, including from respiration. Carbon dioxide is a product of respiration. Okay, remember, respiration is the process through which living organisms break down nutrients to release energy, usually in the presence of oxygen, or sometimes it can occur without oxygen. Okay, so this is therefore to say that living organisms do produce carbon dioxide, including the plants. When they do respire, they produce carbon dioxide, and that same carbon dioxide can be used for the process of photosynthesis, as we have just explained. Okay, so that is something that you need to note. Okay, so we have talked about a few things. One, we are saying that it is colorless. Two, that it does not have odor, so we are saying it is odorless. Those are two properties that we have so far mentioned. Now we can continue to look at the fact that carbon dioxide is actually denser than air. Okay, carbon dioxide is denser than air, and this is actually very important in in extinguishing fire. If carbon dioxide was lighter than air, then you cannot push carbon dioxide into the source of fire and you can't put off the fire. But since it is actually denser than air, it forms a layer that carves out oxygen and therefore extinguishing the fire. Okay, so that is an important property that carbon dioxide has there. It extinguishes fire, that is the other one that comes in, obviously, because of that explanation. It does not support burning. Carbon dioxide does not support burning, and therefore one of the distinguishing characteristics is that if you lower a glowing or a burning splint into a jar containing carbon dioxide, it goes off. Yes, it extinguishes. Okay, it can liquefy and it can also solidify. Solidification is particularly very important in using carbon dioxide as a coolant in refrigerators. Okay, so it also, another property that we had skipped here, is also slightly soluble in water, forming a weak acid or a weak acidic solution. That means that it can turn litmus paper red, okay, because it is a weak acidic solution. So how do you make carbon dioxide in the lab? The setup is as follows. You actually make carbon dioxide from the reaction of dilute acids, and in this case we are using hydrochloric acid reacting with what we call marble chips. Marble chips, it means calcium carbonate. Marble chips are calcium carbonate here. Okay, so you have your marble chips in the flask, and then you let dilute hydrochloric acid react with the calcium carbonate, and then a gas is going to be released. Now that gas will pass through this tube into a first container here, into this first solution, or basically it is actually water, not a solution, into this water that will remove the excess hydrochloric acid, and then it will again pass into the second bottle, okay, the second bottle of now concentrated sulfuric acid to dry the gas. Okay, that means to remove the water, and then it will be collected here as dry carbon dioxide. Okay, so through a process that we call the downward displacement. This method of collection of the gas is what we call downward displacement. Okay, so the carbon dioxide is first passed through water to remove the excess hydrochloric acid, and then it is passed through concentrated hydrosulfuric acid to remove the water to make it dry. And it is collected by downward displacement because it is actually denser than air. That's why it has to be collected by downward displacement. Okay, so the equation is here. That is the calcium carbonate reacting with hydrochloric acid to form calcium chloride plus water plus carbon dioxide that we are interested in that. So what is the confirmatory test for carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide, when it is passed through what you call lime water. Lime water is basically calcium hydroxide. Okay, when you pass carbon dioxide through calcium hydroxide, you're going to form a white precipitate. You're going to form a white precipitate, and this white precipitate is basically calcium carbonate. Okay, but if you pass more carbon dioxide, what you say excess carbon dioxide, this white precipitate will turn into colorless. because you're going to form calcium hydrocarbonate. That's what we form eventually. So we are saying that you pass carbon dioxide into calcium hydroxide. You first form a white precipitate which is solid, and then plus water. Okay, when you pass more carbon dioxide here, you have these products plus carbon dioxide which we have here. Here you form a colorless solution, right, of calcium hydroxide. Okay, that is the confirmatory test for carbon dioxide. So let's look at the reactions of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide does not support burning or does not support combustion. Okay, so we definitely don't have a reaction happening there, and that's why we use carbon dioxide in fire extinguishers, because it does not support burning. Okay. However, there is an exception, which is that when you have magnesium, burning magnesium can decompose carbon dioxide to form magnesium oxide plus carbon. Okay, this is a unique reaction that you should take note of. Okay, it's basically falling under the combustion part, that we are saying that carbon does not support burning, and carbon dioxide does not support burning, and that's why we are using it in fire extinguishers. But we are saying we have an exception where magnesium together with carbon dioxide, the magnesium actually can decompose, split carbon dioxide to form carbon and magnesium oxide. So this is white, and this is black. So you have black sparks of carbon, and then white solid will be formed. Okay, when we have burning magnesium. So meaning that magnesium, when it is burning, has a lot of heat that can decompose the carbon dioxide to form magnesium oxide plus carbon. So you have a white solid with black sparks of carbon being observed. So you can still be asked a question, what happens to burning magnesium when in presence of carbon dioxide? You should be able to say that a white solid will be formed, and this is basically magnesium oxide, and black sparks of carbon, which black sparks of carbon basically happening there. So the next reaction is the reaction of carbon dioxide with water to form a weak acid, which we call carbonic acid. This is a weak acid, this reaction here. Okay, and you also see in subsequent subjects that, subjects, it could be biology, it could be another subject, but in subsequent topics, that this reaction is actually also very important in contributing to dissolution of rocks, and also dissolution of formation of what we call acidic rain. This reaction, you basically come across it, how acidic rains are formed together with sulfur dioxide. So how does carbon dioxide react with alkalis? And we are going to use the example that we actually talked about earlier on. Is related to what we talked about in terms of the test for carbon dioxide. But here we are using sodium hydroxide as an alkali to see what basically happens. when we pass carbon dioxide through an alkali such as sodium hydroxide, you produce carbonates and hydrogen carbonates. Okay, you produce carbonates and hydrogen carbonates depending on the extent or the amount of carbon dioxide that you're going to pass. Initially, you will first form sodium carbonate plus water. That's what you will have initially. And this is the representation of that reaction as an ionic equation. Okay, this is an ionic equation for that. I believe that you look at ionic equations, or you have actually already learned about ionic equations and how they are written. Okay, so that is what you form. But as you pass more carbon dioxide, or have more carbon dioxide present, you will have a hydrogen carbonate being formed. So if you have this, pass more carbon dioxide, we are saying here, you will form sodium hydrogen carbonate. Okay, so you can say that it is similar to the other reaction that we talked about. Okay, so this also is the ionic equation for this one here, is the ionic equation for that equation out there. So when we use this carbon dioxide, already you know it is very important for living organisms, especially plants that make food, and then also the other organisms that we call heterotrophs depend on the food that is made by other organisms. So that means that carbon dioxide is an important element of the ecosystem. Okay, but humans have applied their knowledge about carbon dioxide in a number of ways. To one, fire extinguishers that you already know. Two, it's being used in soft drinks. The soda, when you open the soda, you will see that gas coming up, right? Yes, well, that is basically carbon dioxide. It's basically the preservative there. It solidifies, and I explained this in relation to using it in the refrigerator as a coolant. And then it's a gas that can actually be used in welding, and it's used as a shielding gas. Okay, as the welding takes place, the carbon dioxide basically forms a layer that interferes with the atmospheric gases coming to contact with the welding process, during the welding process. Okay, carbon dioxide is used in producing fertilizers such as urea. Okay, so that marks the end of this presentation, where we basically looked at carbon dioxide and how to make it in the lab, and also its confirmatory tests and the chemical reaction that uses. Thank you.